Hello students, my name is Liz Attia and today's topic is ethics and law. Okay, so ethics versus law. Well, clearly there are some similarities between ethics and law. What are these? Well, they both direct how people should act. So they both hold a standard and try to actually direct what people should do in particular situations and circumstances. In terms of the history and the tradition, they're influenced by religion, by science, by human experience, and by social norms. So they both originate from the same sources of informational standards, if you like. They both emphasise reason, justification, argument, and critical reflection. What do we mean by that? Well, both ethics and law seek to actually be implemented or justified based on logic. So they both claim reason as an underpinning principle as to why they're relevant and why they should actually be followed. For the purpose of making laws, the purpose of making laws is to protect what we believe to be ethically right. So if you actually think about it, most laws that we actually follow within a health professional context and more generally seek to actually be followed based on this idea of reason or goodness and seek to foster a situation or relationships between individuals based on what's the right or the good thing to actually do. I mean, have a think about it. Can you think of any laws that actually promote people to act badly in inverted commas? So clearly laws actually try to protect what people consider to be ethically right. Having said that though, ethics and law are not one and the same thing. In fact, there are differences between them. Well, what are they? The law, although it actually claims reason in terms of making sense, in terms of being logical as an underpinning, it's coercive. So law incorporates central notions of social order, political social consensus, governmental politics, punishment and legal sanction. So whereas ethics promotes people to actually follow it based on being the right and the good thing to be doing, the law is more punitive in nature. It's almost like the stick approach and the carrot and the stick, okay? So it's actually encouraging people to follow and to prescribe to the legal code based on the idea, well, if you don't, there'll actually be legal sanction and there'll be punishment for breaking the law. So it's more coercive. The law is finite and decisive. So at the end of the day, ethics, because it prescribes to a moral code and to a code based on reason, ethical debates can actually be very personal and can go on and on and on. At the end of the day, there's no right or wrong answer because it depends on your perspective and it's subjective. In law, however, it's finite. There is codification of the law, and why there might be actually differences in interpretation, in legal interpretation, at the end of the day, the law is quite finite. And some would actually say decisive, because at the end of the day, if there is a dispute about the interpretation of the law, a judge or a magistrate makes a decision. So there is an end point. And at the end of that, although you know that that decision might be challenged, it comes to a point where the legal process is actually exhausted and the debate is normatively closed, whether you actually like the decision or not. So at the end of that process, once the appeal process is actually exhausted, that becomes the implemented decision, whether it's actually, as I said, agreed to or not. And once that process ends, it can't be changed or reversed. So what else? Well, legal acts are not necessarily ethical and ethical acts are not necessarily legal. So as you notice in the slide, we've actually got this situation where the law and ethics will try to actually be in synergy with one another, there are differences between them. For example, I mean, if we think about taxation law, there are many loopholes within taxation law where people seek to minimise their income and reduce their legal liability to pay tax. And it's arguable, even though it's legal, it's arguable whether in fact that's ethical. So clearly there are some differences there between ethics and law, and legal acts are not necessarily ethical, and arguably some ethical acts are not necessarily legal. Depending upon your position, for example, you might consider abortion is ethical, but under some circumstances it's illegal. Euthanasia you might consider is ethical in some circumstances. Within an Australian context, in all circumstances, it's actually illegal. So there's some differences there. Similarly, over history, we see many examples of this, such as slavery in the US, where it was considered it was considered legal, but certainly not ethical. Apartheid in South Africa, detention of children in immigration camps and detention camps, and even in terms of Australia's current detention laws, some would actually consider unethical despite being enacted in legislation. Okay. Thank you, students. That brings today's topic to an end.